Split allegiances. Can you be a fan of more than one school? That's what we're going to be talking about today. I think that it is a perspective that a lot of people have, that you can only be a fan of one school. A lot of people view fanship like being in a marriage. That if you're trying to be a fan of more than if you're fanning around with different schools, that it's somehow wrong. That you can only give 100% to one school. And I want to challenge that assertion today. This is a video not just for Boise State, not just for Liberty. This is a video for all fans because I think it's a situation that a lot of people fall into. We all become fans of programs different ways, either through attendance or through being born into schools. And there's a couple of ways we'll talk about later on. But those can often collide. You don't always go to the school that you grew up being a fan of, and you're faced with this question, can I be a fan of both? And today I want to answer that question in a way that it affirms that. I think you can be a fan of both programs. We're going to talk about that today. The thing that kind of brought this on is recently a Sea of Red, awesome Liberty-centric athletic news site, ran a Twitter challenge on Twitter, obviously, called the Liberty Twitter Bracket Challenge, where they had all the best Liberty profiles compete against each other, and people voted on their best one until they got down to one profile that got the most votes, and that profile was crowned the best Liberty-centric profile on Twitter. But something that was brought up throughout the competition, and I understand the campaigning that goes on, and you're trying to undermine your opponent and promote yourself. So I understand maybe not all of it was 100% meant, used to try and get the win. But something that was brought up a lot of times as a negative attack against certain profiles was the fact that certain profiles had fanship of multiple teams on that profile. One particular evident one was Flames Volunteer, who is a Liberty fan and a Tennessee fan. And he was relentlessly attacked by his competitors throughout the competition, even though he got pretty high in the end there. But that was something that was relentlessly attacked, and it's really been bothering me, and I wanted to discuss it. And it's also something I wanted to talk about for a while, because I've brought Liberty onto my channel before, not really thinking anything of it, because being a 100% Boise State fan and 100% a Liberty fan comes naturally to me. I don't even think about it. But it's something that people have commented on, and I wanted to address it today, in addition to addressing this idea of dual fanship. And is it attainable? Is it something that's okay? And we're going to talk about that in this video. So we're going to go through my background, how I came to this perspective in life, my fan journey, and then summarizing with the main points in support of this view that it is okay to be a fan of multiple schools and why that is. So let's start off. The first bit here is how I came to this view. Well, for those of you who don't know, which is probably most of you, but for those of you who don't know, I grew up a dual citizen. You might have noticed watching my videos that I pronounce different words differently, and maybe you just thought I had a speech impediment or something, but no, my mom is British and my dad is American, and I grew up learning about and loving both cultures. I grew up learning how to love the differences between the two cultures, between the great deep historical past of Britain and the more recent, only since 1776, but more recent historical past of America, and really how the two meld together. Even though it was a separation of one from the other, they share many things in common, but growing to love the both of them. For instance, I love British food. But I can't stand the fact that there is an obsession for some reason with the sport of soccer over there. I can't stand soccer. So I love elements of both. I love the political system of America and the freedoms that we have here, which I think are unbridled in the world. And I love the countryside of England. And I grew up appreciating the differences between both of these two great countries, both historically and currently great countries. In addition to that, I was a military brat. I moved around my entire life, and I had actually 17 homes in 25 years, and I lived in 10 different states, including every part of America. Deep South, I lived in Alabama and South Carolina. I was actually born in Florida. The North, Idaho. I've lived in Idaho for 2 years, and Ohio, so Midwest, far west with Idaho, and Utah. I lived in Utah, and then Oklahoma, and Virginia, and then there's a couple states I haven't mentioned yet. But I lived throughout the all of America my whole life, and I grew up learning to appreciate and love different parts of this country with oftentimes conflicting culture. I mean, it's a pretty obvious statement to say that different parts of America are different and radically different from each other. But I grew up, I loved every single place that I lived. And it's hard to pick a favorite because I have so many positives from every place that I lived. And I was able to reconcile the fact that all of them were great places to live, even though I was constantly moving around between different spots. And finally, I am the eldest of 9 children. I have 8 siblings. I'm the eldest of the 4 biological, and I have 5 adopted siblings. And I grew up thinking, and which is the factual reality, that there is no difference between my adopted siblings and my biological siblings. They are all my siblings, and I love them all equally, whether I was born into relationship with them or they were born into relationship, because I'm the eldest, so born into relationship with me, and they are biologically part of me, or whether they are legally and adopted into relationship with me. I grew up loving all of them and still do love all of them equally because they're my siblings. So that's my perspective. Dual citizen until 18, military brat, travel across the entire country, and a member of a family with a large amount of adopted siblings. And a large family in general, obviously. But that's my perspective. For me, it's not impossible to love and be 100% committed to multiple different ideas or concepts. Now, my fan journey, how I became a Boise State and Liberty fan, I was born into being a Boise State fan, the short and simple of it. My great uncle was Gene Blameyer, the athletic director at Boise State from 1982 to 2011. It was his idea to put in the blue turf in 1986. And basically my entire dad's side of the family lives in Idaho, scattered throughout different parts of Idaho. So I was born into being a Boise State fan, and I've been a Boise State fan my entire life. And growing up, they were my favorite school. And I truly wanted to go to Boise State. That was the #1 school I wanted. That was pretty much all I was honed in on. And then I discovered that they didn't have Air Force ROTC. They only have, and as should have as this video, I mean, I haven't checked recently because it doesn't apply to me anymore, but at least at the time, and I'm 99% certain still, they only have Army ROTC at Boise, and I wasn't going to go Army. So at that point, I just looked up Christian schools with ROTC units, and Liberty came up, and out of the scholarship money offered, Liberty offered the most, so I went there. There was some family in the area for Liberty as well, and that was really my deciding factor. I truly didn't look that much into the school other than that. And it was one of the best decisions of my life. Liberty is an incredible, incredible university, and I had an amazing time. But my goal when I went to Liberty was to play football. I wanted to try and play football for Liberty, but I tore my ACL my senior year of high school. And when I got to Liberty, I talked to my ROTC commander, and he told me, clear and simple, that if I tore my ACL again, or had any significant injury really, but definitely retore my ACL, I would lose my ROTC scholarship and basically be kicked out of school. And so I made the decision then that if I couldn't play football for Liberty, I would be the #1 fan. So all 4 years at Liberty, I was Mr. Exclamation Point. And this is what I did all 4 years at Liberty, rain or shine, holiday or no holiday. I only missed 1 game the entire time I was at Liberty because of ROTC training. I couldn't get out of that training, but that was the only game. At all 4 years, I painted up as Mr. Exclamation Point, like I said, all weather, and you can get cold in Virginia. We had a couple games there below freezing, sleet and rain, and I was still painted up. I mean, I've been in games where there was maybe 100 other people in the stadium, and we were losing, and I was there right to the end. But at the same time, I also stayed a 100%, so obviously 100% bought in Liberty Flames fan. At the same time, I stayed a 100% committed Boise State fan. I watched every single game, despite the fact that I was on the East Coast and the stupid televising of the Mountain West and Pac-12 gets put on these super late schedules, just adds to which adds to the biases against the East Coast bias effect where people don't watch these late games. But I did. I watched those late games. I mean, I remember a BYU game, I think it was 2017, but it kicked off at 10:15 my time. I had a morning class the next day too, and I was up until 3 a.m. Watching that game, which was a nail biter. I believe that one went into overtime. And again, I'm just going off of memory here. I didn't actually look up the games beforehand, but I watched every single game, and if there was a conflict with a Liberty and a Boise State game, I would watch it on my phone, or there was a couple times where, because in person, I prioritize being in person, I would watch the Liberty game and then go home and tell everybody, do not text me, I'm going to watch the recording. I think I did that twice. But other than that, every single Boise State game live, and 100% committed. And I would wear both. I'd wear my Boise State gear around campus, I'd wear my Liberty gear around campus, and 90% of the time, you'd see me in both. I'd usually have my Liberty shorts on, probably a Liberty shirt or a Boise State shirt, and then a Boise State hat or a Liberty hat, and I cycled, I alternated. And that's what I did my entire time at the schools. And I never thought anything of it because Liberty was FCS, Boise State was FBS, and they weren't even in the same league in any way, not the same conference, they don't play each other. And in the reality of it is, FBS and FCS are basically different divisions of college football. They really have no connection at all besides a few early season games, and that's it. So I never gave it a second thought. And then in 2018, Liberty made the jump to FBS. And that is when people started to say, all right, Liberty's arrived now. They're at the FBS. You have to give up all other fanships. You know, now, yeah, okay, before that argument, FCS, FBS, sure, that's fine. But now we're FBS, you have to choose. And I don't think that's true. And now we're going to talk about these conclusions here. So first off, there are many ways that you become a fan of a school. We talked about it already. You attend, you're born into it. You can have a family member who attends. A lot of Liberty fans, or even Boise State fans, but especially Liberty fans, they're fans because a child of theirs played for or went to the school. I mean, on the Liberty Flames page, that our fan group that I'm a part of, I'd say probably 50% of the fans on there are fans because their child attends the university. Or you can be drawn by play style. I mean, you don't have to go to college or have a family member that went to college to be a college football fan. That's ridiculous. You can be drawn by play style, by success, by storylines, uniqueness. I mean, Boise State has definitely attracted a lot of viewers who became fans because of the blue turf and because of Boise State's unique play style. And between those four main ways, and I'm sure there's others I'm not hitting on, but those are the four main ones, none of them are superior to any other. Attending a school doesn't trump something that you were born into your entire life. That's not how the emotive state, that's not how the emotional mind of the human being works. Fanship is fanship. If you're a true fan of a team, you never stop being a true fan of that team. If you stop being a true fan, you were never a true fan to begin with. And another thing is that it should be, like I already said, it should be expected that Liberty fans are fans of other FBS teams because they've been such an FBS team so recently. And even Boise State to a certain extent, I mean, they haven't, in the grand scheme of college football teams, they haven't been around that long. And there's definitely a lot of members of the older generation who grew up and remember, I don't remember Boise State jumping to FBS because it was in 1996. It was when I was born. So I don't remember that happening. They've always been FBS to me, but there was a lot of the members of the Boise State community who they were FCS Boise State fans and had other alliances that were not linked to Boise State in any way. There's a lot of fans who the FCS to FBS jump, or because it's a different, maybe they live in California and so they're a fan of a California team and it has nothing to do with Liberty. So it's not something that, especially with the way that Liberty recruits and brings in people from all over the country, it is not something that should surprise the Liberty faithful that their faithful have fanship affiliations outside of Liberty. Asking dedicated fans to pick between teams that they are already fans of is like asking fans to pick, is like asking parents to pick between their children. Fans are not married to their teams. They adopt them. You adopt that team into your life. And if you have adopted teams in your life, you have a team that you were born into and a team that you adopted, you do not have to choose between the two of those, because that is like asking me to decide between the siblings that were born into my life to the siblings that were brought into my life. And I can't and wouldn't ever make that decision. As long as fans are 100% committed to Liberty, it doesn't matter what if they're also committed to other teams. Because when your fanship commitment, that 100% isn't a limited percentage. You can be 100% committed to one school and 100% committed to another school, especially if those two teams don't play. Now, I will make an exception to this. I would find it very difficult to believe or to accept someone who said that they were a fan of a rival school. When you have rivalries, you are forced to choose, because that's the nature of rivalries. If you're a fan of a non-rival, non-regional, non-conference team, and you're a fan of Liberty or Boise State or whatever team you're a fan of, and any other team, there's no problem with that. Because your fanship was created before the other situation arose. And fanship doesn't, like I said before, true fanship doesn't dissolve. We're fanatics. That's what fans are. We are unreasonably committed to the programs that we support. And that fanship should never waver. So I want us to stop this blasting and this discussion where we blast other schools, blast other fans because they support other teams. It somehow makes us better fans. It doesn't. All it does is it drives away other fans who could have supported your program. Why would you ever say to someone who's supporting you, oh, you're not supporting me exactly the way I want you to? It doesn't make you look any better. Especially, and I'm going to talk right now to Liberty specifically, especially right now where Liberty is, they need all the fans they can. They're a young program. They're developing. And this goes for Boise State too. You know, they're not a young program necessarily anymore. They're younger than a lot of other teams, but they're still growing. Boise State and Liberty have Power 5 goals eventually. But to become Power 5 goals, they are going to need more than just the fanship base of the cities of Lynchburg and Boise. Both of these schools are going to need buy-in from outside sources, and Boise State has thrived on that. Boise State has a massive, if you go anywhere in the country to watch a Boise State game, you will find Boise State fans there. They have a massive national impact because of the way that their historic way that they've won games. I mean, we talk about, of course, the Boise State Fiesta Bowl of 2006, but even the Fiesta Bowl of 2010, and the Fiesta Bowl of 2014, and then the blue turf and the playing style and the exciting players. I mean, Boise State has built a national fan base, and Liberty's the same way. I mean, Liberty has a dedicated national fan base because of their religious affiliation. So both of these programs have to and naturally rely on outside fan bases. Well, those outside fan bases, those outside of their state borders fan bases, are going to naturally have other allegiances as well. And if those teams aren't playing each other regularly, why does it matter if they support somebody else? It doesn't make them less of a fan. When they're at the games cheering their throats out and standing the whole game and yelling, why does it matter if they do that for someone else as well? It doesn't impact them in any way. I'd love to hear your sides of it, your views. I'm sure that there's definitely a lot of dissenting opinions on this. But I am an admin for Bronco Nation Updates. Over 9,000 members, the largest Boise State fan group on Facebook. I'm not the creator of that. Nick Wade's the creator of that, but I am the admin for that group. I am the creator, because there wasn't one, and so I made one, of the largest, truly right now, only National Liberty Flames Nation Facebook group. So Bronco Nation Updates for Boise State and Liberty Flames Nation for Liberty, which, even though I started it about 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, it's already reached 6,000 members. I have a Boise State channel where I where well, not just Boise State, but it's all college football, but it's Boise State Focus channel where I preview all the Boise State games and promote Boise State. I write articles for A Sea of Red. Same things I do on the channel. I do the same things for Liberty through A Sea of Red. So versus verbally speaking my 3 keys to the game and reviewing the games, I write my 3 keys to the game and reviews the game for Liberty, and then promote them throughout the year with different opinions and articles throughout the year as well. Like I said, admin of the largest Liberty group, admin of the largest Boise State group. I paint up for every Liberty game I can. I'm restricted right now with my job to a certain area around where I live, but any game that comes within my local area, I go to that game. I went to the Boise State versus UCF game, and then I attended the bowl game for Liberty and 2 other games within my local area, and then I was able to get out and fly to a couple other games as well. Nobody should, and I don't think anybody can, question my passion and my dedication to both of my favorite programs. And I don't have a favorite between them. They are both 100% my favorite schools. And I demonstrate that with my fanship. And if I'm able to do that and physically present the counterpoint to those who say you can't be a fan of more than one school, then why can't anybody else? And I would challenge you to create a coherent argument why someone who was born into being a fan of one school can't also be a fan of a school that they've adopted at the same level. Because, like I said, schools are families, and they're adopted families. You're born into them, you're adopted into them, but they're not marriages. They're not marriages. It's not at all close parallel. So please, for the good of your programs, for Boise State, for Liberty, for whatever school you represent that you're watching this video, stop trying to draw lines and get fans to line up on one side of the fence or the other. If they're not a fan of Coastal Carolina or Nevada or an extreme rival school for you, if they're not a fan of a rival school, and especially if they're not a fan of a regional school, a school that plays all the time, if they're in the stands screaming and loud, or if they're promoting your team as best they can, why question it otherwise? So thanks for watching this video. If you're a Boise State fan, make sure you join Bronco Nation Updates, largest Boise State group on Facebook, and look me up on Twitter for Boise State and Bronco Blameyer on Twitter. Make sure you like, subscribe, and same for Liberty fans. Make sure you like, subscribe. I talk Boise State, talk college football, and I brought Liberty in a lot more this season. I intend to keep trying to bring them onto my channel as I can. I previewed their bowl game as well as previewed their season this year. And then I'm LU Flames Nation on Facebook. LU Flames Nation on Facebook as well. And then I'm also LU Flames Nation on Twitter. Make it easy, same thing on both sides. Also, make sure you look up Bronco Nation Updates on Twitter. We also have a Twitter profile as well. Nick Wade runs that one, but we also are on Twitter. So thank you for watching this video. I hope that you've learned a little bit more about me. I've been doing the channel for 2 years, so I figured it's about time I got some form of biographical video to a certain extent out there. And also to explain my fanships here and the fact that I am 100% committed to both of these incredible developing and programs for which the future is amazingly bright for both of my favorite schools. So thanks for watching this video. As always, go Big Blue, and I'll also end it, go Flames!